Avidrone started day 4, August 6th, by taking the lead at a 3.84 payload ratio. Then it came back with enough weight to cross the 4-to-1 line. The aircraft lifted, the main rotor flexed, one blade failed, and the rotor cut through the tail boom. That one launch captures the entire day. Real progress, almost no margin, and a field full of teams learning exactly where their designs stopped working. This is every aircraft that flew, tried to fly, or reached the line on day 4, with the test flights separated from actual scoring runs. The starting benchmark belonged to Xtreme Aerial Concepts at 3.04, with MacGyver and H² also holding completed scores above 2. Nobody had completed the course at 4-to-1. August 6th had 4 operating windows, and the first one produced nearly all of the leaderboard movement. The important distinction all day was between lift capability and a score. A dramatic hover can prove thrust, but a score still requires the loaded distance, the payload drop, the unloaded leg, the altitude corridor, and a clean finish. YGGY Aviation opened with a 29.4-pound compound helicopter concept. Its first official attempt carried 52.4 pounds for a 1.78 ratio, but the team brought it home after only a short section instead of completing the course. Run 3 was much more aggressive. The overlay showed 92.4 pounds of payload and a 3.14 ratio. Soon after liftoff, the aircraft rolled and came down hard. The broadcast suspected a gust, although the video alone does not establish a single cause. The result was no new score and a machine that needed inspection before another attempt. Avidrone supplied the day's one completed scoring breakthrough. Its conventional single main rotor layout weighed 29.3 pounds and carried 112.4. The loaded 4 nautical miles were almost uneventful, which was the impressive part. It returned to the pad, set down smoothly, dropped the plates, launched again, and completed the final unloaded mile. The full run put 3.84 on top of the board. It was only 16/100ths short of the full prize threshold, but it was a complete result rather than a hover or projection. That difference made it the number everyone else had to chase. Defentex demonstrated the opposite extreme of the challenge. Its aircraft weighed about 13 pounds and briefly lifted 112.4 pounds, with the live graphic showing 8.71. That is extraordinary static lift, but the team never began a scoring run. One return was hard enough that the lightweight arms folded over the airframe. Avidrone then added weight to its proven configuration and tried to move past 4. The rotor blade failure happened almost immediately. The team later described it as a tail boom strike and expected to repair it. Neither effort improved the board, but together they showed why the course, endurance, and control requirements matter as much as raw lift. The Virginia Tech DARPA Lift team also had a short day on the line. Its liquid-fueled multi-rotor was caught in an upset, rolled, and hit the grass while the rotors still appeared powered. The commentators pointed to a gust, but the verified result is simply a crash with no score. Hanumantam used an earlier appearance for a short systems test. Its more important window came at the end of the day, so we will return to it with the weather. Window 2 was mostly development work. Driftless Robotics flew its huge rotorcraft repeatedly with no payload. The aircraft hovered for long stretches, moved cleanly, and delivered some of the smoothest landings of the day. It never advanced to a loaded scoring attempt, but it left with useful control and endurance data. Cactus Labs had the opposite problem before takeoff. Its turbine-driven tip-jet rotor developed a visible shimmy during repeated ground runs. The team added balance weights and tried again, but the vibration remained. The sensible result was no launch, rather than risking a rotor system that was already advertising a problem. Quarry Hill Aero's first flight lasted seconds. As the rotorcraft rose, its tilting wings moved forward, a gust pushed the machine back toward the team, and the pilot hit the kill switch. The left wing and skid needed repair, but the safety decision was immediate and correct. Sherman Aeronautics then flew one of the strangest workable systems on the field: two tethered fixed-wing aircraft circling a central payload. At 38.4 pounds of aircraft and 82.4 pounds of payload, the overlay showed 2.15 during a weighted check. It lifted, spun, and landed. Because it was a check rather than a full course attempt, it produced no score. Power and propulsion tested a conventional multi-rotor with a payload hanging below on a tether. The 36.2-pound aircraft carried only 11.9 pounds during this safety check, giving the team data on the pendulum behavior before committing more weight. Crotocarbon spent nearly its whole slot tuning a large helicopter and finally achieved a brief hover in the closing minutes. Kansas City Space Pirates spun up another unusual single-rotor design with weight attached, but it did not leave the pad in the covered window. None of the three made a scoring attempt. Their day was about clearing one technical gate at a time. MacGyver entered the afternoon in third with a completed 2.51. The team loaded its 54.6-pound quad with 171.9 pounds, enough for a 3.15 result and second place if it finished. The aircraft looked controlled until a turn, when it lost altitude and crossed below the 100-foot floor. That immediately invalidated the run after about 1 point to nautical miles. MacGyver tried another tuning flight. During descent, the machine became unstable. The Velcro-secured plates broke free, and the sudden unloading launched the aircraft back upward. The pilot recovered it and landed. The team kept its old 2.51 score, but the attempted 3.15 did not count. Agriculture Technologies made a promising first impression. Its minimalist tilt wing weighed 47 pounds, carried 57.4, transitioned cleanly between hover and forward flight, and landed after a 1.22 test. Near the end of the window, another low transition went wrong. The wing hit the ground and the airframe showed visible damage, ending its day. Aptos Aero flew an unloaded check with its coaxial rotor system. A persistent oscillation grew as the aircraft moved away, so the team brought it down. The landing was heavy and the rotor continued turning on the ground, but the machine stayed largely intact. Neither team attempted the scored course. Mimino's no-weight flight briefly appeared as a scoring run in the broadcast data, but it carried almost no payload and went below the altitude floor before an uncontrolled landing out in the field. The team returned later with some weight for another check and again finished off the pad. The Materials aircraft was the day's softest-looking structure and one of its toughest. The inflated frame itself weighed just 2 pounds 10 ounces. It passed a half-weight check cleanly. On a later flight, a propeller struck an electronic speed controller mounted too high on an inflated tube. The aircraft came down, but the team reported that the core inflatable structure survived. Reasonably Adequate lived up to the humor in its name with one of the sharper saves of the afternoon. During a half-weight check, the multi-rotor pitched violently. The pilot caught it, regained a stable hover, and eventually set it down farther along the lane. Stanford Online High School's drone team used a box-wing structure made with home-built cutting equipment. It made only brief hops and continued to show stability problems. The team kept troubleshooting on the pad rather than beginning a scored run. Both projects produced real engineering evidence, but neither reached a scored attempt. Burrell Aerospace reached the pad with a laptop out and only minutes left, still working on flight controller settings. It never launched. Spitfire Defense became the window suspense story. Its aircraft was a turbine tail sitter carrying its payload on a long rope. The team fueled it, closed the fuselage, cleared the pad, and received a 3-minute extension. The turbine produced smoke and briefly throttled, then shut down. There was no takeoff before the extension ended. The machine remained one of the day's most intriguing concepts, but Day 4 supplied an engine test, not a flight. Hanumantam was the only team scheduled in the fourth window. It completed an unloaded flight check with the whole course available. Then the rain arrived. Officials brought the aircraft under cover and held the window. With the weather not clearing, the fourth and final session was terminated. That left Hanumantam with test data, but no loaded attempt, and it froze the leaderboard exactly where the first window had put it. August 6th ended with Avidrone on top at 3.84 after the day's only completed scoring breakthrough. Xtreme Aerial Concepts stayed second at 3.04. MacGyver held third at 2.51 after its 3.15 attempt dropped below the altitude floor. H² remained fourth at 2.32. Everyone else was still testing, repairing, or waiting to launch. Nobody reached 4-1. Avidrone proved the course just below it. Defentex proved far greater static lift, but not the course. The remaining blockers were control, vibration, endurance, weather, and time. That was every day for Flier, including brief checks and teams that reached the pad but never launched. Day 5 starts with Avidrone in front, repairable aircraft across the field, and clearer failure modes for everyone. The full broadcast and lane views are linked below.